My name is Laurel, and I used to be a trans woman. For 6 years of my life, I lived as a woman. I believed for most of my life that I was born in the wrong body. I was born male, and for most of my life, I harbored this undying belief that I should have been born a girl. I believed with everything I was that my mind or my soul was female and that I somehow was in a male body. So in this video, I want to talk a little bit about this whole experience, the experience I had, and talk about how this whole thing affects others, especially minors in today's world. Kids in today's world, they're growing up in a society that is bombarded with social media. When I was a kid, we did not have social media. If we did have social media when I was a kid, perhaps I would have not felt like I was such a freak for my whole life. See, I lived most of my life believing that I was the only person on this entire planet that felt like I was in the wrong body. I did not know what it meant to be trans. I did not know what being transgender was. All I knew was my experience was that I was this kid that felt like I was in a boy's body, but I had the mind of a girl. And I honestly believed this, and I believed I was born this way. I lived my whole life with this. Back when I first transitioned and I came out. So this is probably the first of many videos. I am trans. I have to do it for myself, believe it or not. I look at old pictures of myself and I know I was a guy. I really wasn't. I never was. That's what you have to understand about being transgender. It's not like all of a sudden a person decides, oh, I don't like being a guy anymore. I don't like being a girl anymore. I'm going to change myself to be what I really want to be. No. It's that I've always been this way. I've always been this person. It's just that now I'm finally able to let it out. I'm finally able to be this person externally that I've always been internally. I used to have to claim that I was born that way. I was like, this is something that cannot change. This is how I am. This is who I am. This is the real me. In fact, I made a YouTube video that said, this is the real me. This is the real me. This is who I am. I'm a female. I just happen to be born in a boy's body. And so what would happen to me when I was living life as a woman, or feeling like I was a trans person, is when I would see other people detransition, go from living as their felt gender back to their biological gender, it confused the hell out of me. And it destabilized me every time it would happen. Every time these other trans individuals that I knew and interacted with would suddenly go back to living as a man, I would go into a bit of a crisis, because then all of a sudden I'd have to question myself. Well, what's that say about my validity as a human being, as a trans person? If these people are going back to their biological gender, then does that mean I should? But the crazy thing is, at the time, I said, no way, that's not me. I was born this way. This is never going to change. I am a female that happens to be in a male body. This is never going away. And so I went to therapists to get letters of approval to get hormones, and I started hormone replacement therapy in 2017. And I started taking female hormones, and it was the most amazing thing. It felt so euphorically amazing because it felt right. It felt like I was finally doing something that was confirming my gender, that was affirming to who I believed I truly, honestly was inside. And I knew that the hormones would cause my outside to look more like my insides felt, and so it felt amazing to take those hormones. And then 2 years later, came the time when I was eligible to have the surgery, to have my penis removed and have it turned into a surgically constructed vagina. Further efforts to try to make my body match my internal sense of self, my belief about myself. I wanted my exterior to match my interior. Now, having surgery, having your genitalia surgically altered, surgically removed and reconstructed to match something different, that is a major thing to go through.
and it is a major decision. But I made that decision feeling perfectly confident in it, thinking that that was the right thing for me, that I needed my body so bad to match my interior sense of self that I was willing to go through that surgery. I'm married too. My wonderful, amazing wife, who we shared an amazing intimate connection before this, I still made the choice to have that done because it felt so right to me personally. I was so identified with being this woman, this female, that I had to have the surgery. I felt. I was honestly at a place where I felt if I cannot have the surgery, I can't go on living anymore, because I felt so discontent in my own body. In my own male body. I could not be male. I could not accept it. I could not love myself as a male. I could not love my penis. It was all disgusting to me. I wanted nothing to do with my maleness. I wanted to be a girl in every way possible. And of course the struggle is that I lived most of my life with all this testosterone pumping through my body, so I became a man. And so trying to change from a full man on the exterior to looking female or feminine, I knew that there was no chance I was ever going to pass, but I had to get over that. I had to accept the fact that I am trans. I have the mind and soul of a girl that happens to be in a boy's body, so we need to just fix this and get on with life and be happy, right? And so I had the surgery. I lost my penis and testicles and my ability to ever father children again, and I was fine with that because I thought, I'm a girl, I'm a woman, it's okay. I don't need that. This stuff won't be necessary anymore. So I had the surgery in 2019, and then in late 2023, just last year, 5 months ago, I started to have some realizations. I started to realize that gender identity and a person's sense of self is entirely rooted in their past experiences. Every little experience that you have as you're growing up, you're developing a sense of self based on those experiences. Every little thing your mom says to you as a child, you hear it, you take it in based on your current context and perspective at the time as a child living in your household, and the things you're exposed to on TV, the things you hear, the things you sense, the things you feel in your body based on everything you've ever experienced up to that point, causes you to receive everything and interpret it and make sense of it. And so when, like for example, when your mom, like mine did, shows you or tells you the appropriate way to look at your fingernails, that the looking at them like this is the appropriate way for a man, looking at your fingernails like this is the appropriate way for a girl. I don't know why my mom demonstrated that to me, but for whatever reason it stuck. It stuck hard for me when I was a kid, being told this. And in my poor little mind, my over-analytical mind, as I tried to understand as a small child, being told that there is an appropriate way, a feminine and a masculine way to look at your fingernails, as a child, I took that in along with everything else I was receiving, everything else my mom was saying about men and how terrible men were. The boy animals were disgusting, the penises are disgusting. There was always this talk about penises and how gross they are and how gross men are and how disgusting men are. This was the childhood, the household I grew up in. And so I had no choice as a child but to take all of this in my little child brain and calculate it to mean that, well, I guess being a girl is way better. It will give me the love I want. Clearly, my mother, who's my primary caregiver, hates men. She's always talking about men like they're the most disgusting thing on the planet. And so what else was I supposed to believe? Now I share this because this shows an example of how you can develop a sense of self, a sense of identity that's not really real. It's based on your experiences. And so growing up in an environment where you're exposed to certain ideas, ideology, or I grew up Mormon. That's another key aspect to this whole thing. I grew up in a household that was very Mormon. My family goes back in the Mormon church very far. I was told that it was my heritage when I went to leave the church. How could you possibly leave your family heritage? As if that's a reason to continue to believe in something so ludicrous as a man-made religion that teaches you that you are so small. I grew up believing that I was created as an individual and placed on this earth to prove myself to God, and then I would someday return to live with God, and that I would still be the same person, the same individual that I was created as on this earth, and that I would be that person for eternity. So imagine growing up feeling like I was trans, growing up feeling like I was a girl in a boy's body, but being told that I was a boy and that I was created as a boy in the pre-existence, that I am a boy here and that I will be a boy forevermore. That fucked with my head. Being told that, I couldn't accept that. I could not accept that I would just be trapped a boy forever. How could this possibly be that for eternity I would have to be a boy, I would have to be a man for all of eternity and never get to experience what it's like to be a girl? That was part of the psychological thing that went into my whole having to transition, because for one, I felt like I was a girl in a boy's body, but then I'm feeling like I'm never ever going to get to experience what it's actually like to be a girl. Even in my next life, there's no such thing as a next life. There's no such thing as reincarnation. This was how I was raised. And so it all played into my belief. It all played into my growing up and believing that I needed to do something about this. That I can't go on living the rest of my life in a boy's body when there's options out there. See, when I was in my mid-20s, that was the first time I finally stumbled upon what it was to be trans. I didn't even know transgender existed, like I said earlier. I thought that I was the only person on the entire planet that had this secret, and it was a deeply held secret too, because I believed I was the only person on the whole planet that suffered with this condition, this feeling that I was a girl trapped in a boy's body. I didn't dare tell anybody that. I was not ever going to tell anybody that shit. That was something I kept so deeply held inside for fear of being thought that I was crazy and that I would be put in a mental hospital or something if I ever told anybody that. So can you imagine in my 20s when I stumbled across websites online that finally told me what being trans was, that transgender was actually a thing, and that there's thousands of other people out there that live with this same thing? It all of a sudden made me aware of a community. I all of a sudden realized I wasn't alone in the world, and I felt a welcoming space, welcoming community that was like, oh, we love you, we see you, you're valid, we'll welcome you in, you can transition, there's options, there's hormones you can take to change your body, there's surgeries you can have. And I was just mind blown. I thought, this is amazing. There's actually hope that I can experience what it's like to be a girl after all. I don't have to be a man forever. But of course, at the time when I discovered that, testosterone had already been in my body for so many years. I was in my mid-20s, like I said, and I was very clearly a man. There was no chance in hell of me ever passing if I transitioned, no matter how long I took hormones or no matter what surgeries I got. The structure of my body is that of a man. That's just what happened to me. So when I decided to transition, it came with the understanding that I would be doing so unable to pass. Whereas some trans women are very lucky. They can pass. They can take hormones for a while, they can dress and put makeup on and go out in the world, and everybody just assumes that they are female, that they were born that way. And that's amazing for them, although it still doesn't rectify the issue that being trans is a product of your experiences anyway. Even those trans women who can pass, they're still only trans because of their experiences, because their childhood programmed into them an understanding, an idea that being a different gender is ideal, or this idea like what happened to me. My childhood programmed into me the actual belief that I was a different gender inside my body. And this is what I hope to convey. I hope to share with you that this can happen. Just because you fully believe that you are the other gender in the wrong body does not necessarily mean it's real. Your childhood experiences and everything programmed your psyche in such a way that you arrive at a place in life where you honestly believe you were born this way. You honestly believe that you were born the wrong gender in the wrong body. But the fact is, our bodies are basically perfect. Our bodies are formed by a perfect energetic pattern that exists beyond this physical earth life. We would not exist if it wasn't for this pattern in place that causes our bodies to form biologically. Now, our biological form can sometimes come with birth defects and other defects that happen while we're in utero, in our mother's womb, and she consumed things or she did things, was exposed to things that caused us to form with certain defects. But being trans is not a birth defect. Being trans is a belief. It is a belief in the mind that is developed over a course of a person's childhood and the experiences that they have, the perspectives they develop over the course of that childhood. And therefore, the question becomes, if being trans is a belief, should you make life-altering permanent decisions or permanent modifications to your body based on this belief? Now, if you are an adult, then yes, you have every right to do that. You are an adult, you have every right to make changes to your body, surgical changes to your body if you want to, if you've calculated the risks and why you want it, and if you identify as trans and you want to live as a woman and you're an adult, then great, go for it. Have all the surgeries you want to attempt to make your body conform to your internal beliefs. The problem is, no amount of surgeries, no amount of hormones are ever going to actually make you a woman. They only make you appear as a woman. They may even make you feel like you're a woman. They may bring you happiness. It may bring you happiness in life. But the problem is, because it's based on a belief, chances are, if you go through all these procedures and everything and have all these changes to your body, and then at some point, like me, you come to the realization that, oh shit, I guess that was actually all just beliefs. And it was my childhood trauma that caused me to believe that I needed to do this. And now, here I finally recognize for the first time in my life that I'm actually a man. It's okay that I'm a man. I can love myself as a man, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't need to conform to this other belief system that I developed over the course of my childhood. I can live happily as a man and not have to take hormones anymore that are not what my body actually wants. See, that was one of the things that played into it. I realized I was starting to have health issues that were based on the hormones I was taking. I was bombarding my body, my male body, my biologically male body, I was bombarding it with female hormones that were causing changes. Yes, they caused me to develop breasts somewhat. Luckily, my breasts, once I stopped estrogen, mostly went away. I'm someone who, for the most part of my life, suffered with gynecomastia, which is enlarged male breasts, which may have played into my body, my sense of self, my sense of body image and things as I was growing up as well. It was really weird to be a boy that had boobs, but to feel like I was a girl anyway, so to appreciate the fact that I had boobs, it's all weird. When you're trans, obviously, you want to seek affirming care. We call it affirming care because it's care that affirms your sense of self, your sense of identity. So affirming care for trans person would be hormones or surgeries that affirm who you believe yourself to be, right? And so when I went to get my affirming care, in order to get it, insurance won't pay for it unless you go to therapists and prove yourself to actually have the condition of transgender. You have to prove that you are actually trans by going to therapists who talk to you and talk it out and determine whether you really are trans, and then they write you a letter to get hormones, and then when it comes time to surgery, you go to another therapist and they talk to you and determine that you really are trans and that you need this surgery to be happy. And I did at the time. At the time I did. Now, the first therapist I went to, this person is actually a close family friend now. It's kind of funny. This person identifies as non-binary, and I was happy about that at the time. When I was seeking a gender therapist that could write me these letters for my affirming care, of course I wanted someone that was going to understand me, so I purposefully sought out a gender non-conforming therapist who was more likely to understand me and understand what I was going through and was more likely to write the letter for me. And because it's a scary thing, it's a scary prospect to go to a therapist and unload all of this gender identity stuff on them and tell them what you're struggling with, and then to be afraid that they're going to sit there and look at you funny and think you're crazy or something. So you want someone that's going to understand. So I specifically chose a trans identifying therapist that I felt would be more likely to understand me. So the first therapist I went to get my letter for hormones was trans. And then in order to get surgery, I had to go to an actual licensed psychologist. And this was someone that Kaiser Permanente sent me to. It was a Kaiser psychologist. And I actually did not know the status of this psychologist, this therapist, until I showed up there at the therapist's office and sit down and discover that this therapist, this psychologist, is also a trans woman. She was in her 50s probably. As I sat there, it caused me to reflect and realize that this is kind of interesting, that the person that would stand in the way of me getting the surgery also happens to be trans. And if that's the case, then where is the gatekeeping? Now, the trans community likes to use the term gatekeeping a lot, because when there is someone standing in the way of us getting this affirming care that we're looking to get, it feels like somebody is standing at the gate trying to keep you from getting what you want. And that's never fun. When you feel like you should have access to something and you need something in order to be happy and someone is standing in the way, that sucks. And so as a trans person, when I would discover that the therapist was trans themselves, obviously I was like, well, that gatekeeper is not going to be a gatekeeper. They're going to be like, oh, welcome, you're just like me. And if they were to gatekeep me, if they were to close the gate on me and block me from getting affirming care, then that would be causing them to question their own validity as a person, as a trans person. You can't sit there as a trans psychologist and deny someone trans affirming care, or that invalidates your own experience as a trans person. And so I feel like it's a really tragic situation when we have trans people who are working these positions that would stand in a position to maybe bring some sense to you, but instead they have no reason not to. They have every reason in the world to give you that letter, to affirm your identity, because then it in turn affirms their identity. And so I stand here today really questioning this concept, really looking back on it, and knowing at the time I was so convinced that I was trans and that I had to have that surgery, that if that psychologist had denied me or told me that they didn't really think I was trans, I probably would have lost my shit. And I probably would have gone and found a different psychologist until I found one that would write that letter for me, because I felt like I had to have it. If I didn't have it, we couldn't go on living anymore. So to recognize the fact that I could be at that point, that I could feel that way, I could feel so sure that that was what I wanted and had to have happen in my life, or I couldn't go on living anymore. But then 5 months ago, to suddenly have this awakening and this realization of what caused my gender identity, what caused me to feel like I was trans, and now to recognize I'm not actually trans, I absolutely was. That's the other thing I want to talk about. In the trans community, there is this tendency that when people detransition, trans people want to tell us that we weren't really trans. I used to do the same thing. Okay, when I was living as a woman and I saw someone detransition, my answer to that was, well, clearly they weren't really trans. If they could detransition, they clearly were not trans to begin with. They were confused, they thought they were trans, and they went through hormones and everything only to find out they weren't really trans. And so that's what I'm getting now. I'm getting a lot of that from the trans community trying to tell me, well, you weren't really trans then, so you don't get to speak on trans topics because you aren't really trans. You're not one of us. You go from being completely welcomed by this community to being shoved out like you're evil, like you're trying to rid the world of trans people. I'm not trying to rid the world of trans people. I was one. I know the experience. I know what it's like. And therefore, I have nothing but love and acceptance for those who identify as trans because I know what that's like to truly feel and believe in every way, on every level, that you are the wrong gender in the wrong body, or that you are a different gender that is in the wrong body. It is a very real belief. It is a very real thing that trans people deal with. And so I recognize that trans people need nothing but love and acceptance and appreciation and respect for being a human being that just happens to struggle with a sense of self that differs from their biology. And if a person wants to live different than their biology, there's nothing wrong with that. But I am here to give you a warning that no matter how much you believe that you want that surgery, no matter how much you believe that taking hormones are going to make you a woman, no matter how much your sense of self is tied up in this believing that you genuinely are a female trapped in a boy's body, no matter how strong that belief is, it can change. If you had made permanent alterations to your body, irreversible surgical changes to your body, or even hormonal changes to your body, some of them are permanent. Some of them will never go back. Some of them will stay. Like for trans men, I see all kinds of trans men who went on testosterone for a long time and it lowered their voices, and now they can't get that back. In order to talk like a female again, they have to do all this vocal training in order to get their feminine voice back. And that's tragic for them because now they're living their life as a girl again, but they have this male voice. And now here I am living as a man again, but I have a vagina. So it is a horribly tragic thing to go through. And at the time, no matter how real or right it feels, it can change. So that's the warning that I offer. If you struggle with a sense of gender identity that differs from your biology, try to stay curious to the fact that it might be based on beliefs, that it might be based on your past experiences, and that it can change. It might not necessarily be the way you feel for the rest of your life. So do you really want to make a change to your body that later, when it does change, if it does change, that you're going to regret? Do you really want to have made massive surgical alterations to your body that you can never undo based on a belief that can change? Because that's what being trans is. It's a belief. It is a belief. It feels real. It absolutely feels like it's who you are. And because it's a belief and it's your belief, you have every right to live according to how you feel makes you feel happy and show up in the world in your best way. That's your right. If you identify as trans, great, go for it. But if your kids identify as trans, if children identify as trans, it is not real. It's real to them, but it's a belief system based on their life experiences. And so to give them hormones that damages their body, that makes them unable to have kids in their future and things, and changes their voice and changes their body and things, or to give them surgery that is even worse. It is a temporary belief, especially in kids. Kids go through all kinds of fluctuations of identity and sense of self as they're trying to figure themselves out as they're growing up. If you go feeding them hormones to change their body based on a belief that all children go through this period of trying to figure themselves out, figure out who and what they are, if you allow them to make permanent changes to their body based on their inexperienced child beliefs, this is tragic, absolutely tragic. I think of Jazz Jennings. I used to love Jazz Jennings. Yeah, Jazz Jennings gave me a lot of hope, although Jazz was someone who started on testosterone blockers and hormones very early on. So Jazz Jennings looks female, looks like she looks, sounds, acts like she was born female. But that's, again, because she grew up being this way. Our identities, our sense of self, is all based on experience and all based on perspectives developed in those experiences. And as children, we don't have the context, we don't have the life experience to fully make sense of what we're experiencing. And so we have no choice but to make a story based on context, based on our reality, based on what we're experiencing. I just want to share my story. I actually wrote a book about my story. It's called From He to She to Me, because I went from he to a she to now I'm just me, which for the first time in my 43 years of life, that is a man. That is a man that I can love being. I love being a man. It's okay. I grew up believing it wasn't okay to be a man, and that's the only reason I went through what I went through. And that's the only reason I developed the belief that I was honestly a female in a male's body. And here I am now, having had the surgery and experiencing extreme grief and sorrow over that. I cannot even express to you the level of grief I feel. I told my wife it's kind of equivalent to getting in a fit of rage and killing a whole family and then realizing afterwards what you did. It's almost that significant. To recognize the changes I made to my body are as serious as if I had killed somebody, and I can never bring them back to life. I can never undo that. I gave up my life force energy, my ability to create sperm. That's the male's spark of life. I gave that up because of a belief that was built in me as a child that I was a girl in a boy's body, when it was never real in the first place. And I made permanent, irreversible surgical changes to my body based on this temporary belief in my head. And now here I am, recognizing who I really am, but having made permanent changes to my body that I can never undo. And this is the warning that I want to give to anybody that may see this video, anybody that may come across my book on Amazon and read it and read my story and understand I was absolutely trans. It is very offensive when people try to tell me, well, you weren't really trans or you wouldn't have detransitioned. Yes, I was. I was very trans. I was the definition of trans. I had so much body dysphoria. I would look at my body, I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand my penis. Now, I long to have my penis back. I wish so bad my body was intact again. I wish so bad that I had not made the choices I made based on a belief which now changed. A belief that changed because beliefs do that. Beliefs have a tendency to change when you change perspective. Perspective is everything. Looking at things from a different angle, looking at things from new lenses. We're all living life with all these goggles piled on our face, these lenses that we're looking through based on every experience we ever went through. As we're growing up 5 years old, there goes those goggles on our face. We're now looking at everything from that point on based on the experiences we had previously. And that put goggles on our face that cause us to look at the world in a certain way. And the more goggles we get put on our face over the course of our life as we have all these experiences and we learn to perceive the world in certain ways through these lenses, it causes us to develop beliefs. Sometimes they're very, very strong beliefs, very strong internal beliefs that are even about our own identity and our sense of self, which will cause us to make surgical changes to our body that are permanent and can never be undone. Beliefs are a powerful thing. Beliefs cause a lot of people to do a lot of crazy things. Belief in religion causes people to attack people, to murder people based on this belief that they're doing something good for the higher good, for God and things. Belief can be a very dangerous thing when you fully ascribe to it. You should always stay curious, always remain curious that perhaps maybe there's information that I'm not really aware of. Perhaps maybe there's something else out there that I'm not understanding. Perhaps maybe I'm thinking this is who I am and this is what I need to do to myself, but that's only based on beliefs. Maybe when I become exposed to more information, maybe I won't want to do this anymore. I wish so bad I had given myself that opportunity. I wish when I laid in that hospital as they were about to give me the anesthetic to put me under, I wish I would have said, wait, stop, I don't think I want to do this, and backed out. But The fact is, here I am. I did it. This is the life I have to live with. Going back and beating myself up over the choice I made is never going to fix anything. But using my story, using my experience to help those in the world now, especially given the fact that this whole trans movement is happening. There are so many kids now that are identifying as trans that did not before. So many kids that now see it. They're struggling with their typical childhood issues that all kids deal with. Most kids deal with. Many kids deal with a lot of feelings of inadequacy. They don't like the way they look and things, but now they're exposed to all this social media, and on top of the social media is all of this trans influence that they're dealing with these internal struggles, and then they come across something that says, oh, you might be trans. Maybe your issues that you're struggling with is that you're really a boy in a girl's body. Here, take some testosterone. It'll fix you. It'll make you feel better and happier. And it does for a while. For a while, those of us who do the trans affirming care do feel better about ourselves. We do feel happy. We do feel way better. But then things change. Perspectives change. We realize, oh, wait. I can actually be a boy, or I can be a girl. It's okay. I never should have done that in the first place. But the tragedy is when things have been permanently changed based on that, and you can never get them back. So please hear my warning that your personality, your identity, it can all change. It's not fixed. It is not rigid. Your personality even is not set in stone. You can change that. You can change that. And I'm not necessarily saying you should, but if you identify as trans and your internal sense of self differs from your exterior, there's a reason for that. And it's not because you were born that way. It's because you went through a certain set of experiences and circumstances and gained perspectives and beliefs over the course of your childhood that caused you to believe this, to develop this belief of self.
Thank you for listening. There will be more videos as I think of more thoughts. I've been doing blogs because I wasn't quite ready to show myself like this, even though I've been taking pictures. Pictures are different. Pictures, you don't hear my voice. And pictures, I can control the angle, make myself look more attractive, because when you still have a manly face like I do, there are certain angles that don't look good. Thank you. Be kind to your trans people. All we want is love. All we want is to be accepted for who we are. That's all we want. We just want to be able to live our lives, be happy, go to the store, go to amusement parks, whatever, dressed how we want to, just what makes us feel comfortable. That's all we want. Please just try to understand that. Try to understand. Thanks.